What's the relationship between science and consciousness?
It's a good point, because there are many evidence-focused scientists out there
Yeah.
who will tell you that your consciousness, your awareness, is what's called epiphenomenon. It means it's something that is a consequence of all the electronic firings of your brain cells. It's the collective net effect of those.
Yeah.
And your consciousness can be switched off, because you can. And this is what my master's degree studied. We studied general anesthetics and looked at where in the brain those anesthetics act on, and there are technically switches that can be switched off, and in a neuron in a particular brain cell. And when the anesthetic does this, it essentially switches off the electrical currents running around inside the brain cell.
Yeah.
And if you switch off the electrical currents, not just within the brain cell, but also between the brain cells, then that's when a person loses consciousness and they go into general anesthesia, like you would, if someone's going to surgery, for example. Now, that's the reductionist, Western, materialistic, scientific kind of understanding of consciousness. It's all about brain cells and electrical currents running around them and between them. And if you switch those electrical currents off using something like an anesthetic, then there's no more consciousness. And
right.
It proves the point. But that's a Western materialistic reductionist perspective. People from the East, especially from places like India, China, and other countries like Africa and Pacific nations, they have a different perspective of consciousness, which is linked to nature. And it's not to do with the firings of brain cells. It's more, again, it's more to do with the relationship. It's more to do with dimensions as well. The dimensions that we live in and work in and experience in the three-dimensional world that we're in, that moves through time, that's a very limited perspective that we have of the world. In certain states of consciousness, it's possible to elevate your awareness and see the world beyond physical senses, to see the world, for example, across time and not just across space. So those perspectives of consciousness, they're more what might be called unitary. Yeah. They recognize that your consciousness is not just in your brain, but it's found in an interconnected way with everything else in the universe. And there's some aspects of quantum physics, the most kind of advanced science there is in the world, that suggests there is this interconnection between all things, and that interconnection isn't just some passive thing. It's got a kind of sentience to it. It's got a kind of intelligence to it. So that's another way of looking at consciousness. It's not something just in the brain, but as an interconnected kind of field of energy.
Okay, that's fascinating.